So this is number 41. We're losing track of numbers here, but we needed some way to keep track of the documents that go with it. You both know about chat and raising your hand. Oop, there we go. It's our native Heuchera villosa coming up. And of course, a Norway maple trying to pretend that it belongs there. That's a Heuchera villosa that we were dividing, Chuck Martin and I, on the webinar last fall when he was helping divide shady plants. And we took one Heuchera villosa and I made it into 20 pieces. And 16 of them made it, all just stuck in the ground with a little tiny bit of root, and they're all looking quite nice like that. Hopefully make a good ground cover. Hello, Greg. Congratulations. Greg, isn't that beautiful? Look at those leaves. The leaves might look like they're dusty or something, but I can tell you in real life, it's a much sweeter effect. That's a variegated spirea with pink flowers, spring blooming spirea. It's a hybrid. It's a hybrid and a selection of the snowmound spirea, the one that you see so often with the big cascading branches. That's like 8 feet by 8 feet. Michelle's not here yet, so we won't talk about her plants, but we'll get back to those. I will tell you that I'm very pleased with Forest Farm. We have been for years ordering from Forest Farm, especially since we started having our biggest problems with root balls that needed to be totally remade in order to plant something bigger. From Forest Farm, we can order things small, and this is called a tube. And I ordered from them a blue shag pine, dwarf pine, to replace the one that the pine borers got into in our garden. And it did die. Well, there might be a little tiny bit of it alive, but most of it's dead. We said we need another one, and it needs to be a blue shag so that it actually fits the hedge. And I ordered one. They took the order, and it was for a gallon plant. And then they emailed me the next week. They said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We have only one left in the gallon, and it looks really bad. We would not want to send it out. What do you want us to do?" I said, "Shoot, you don't have any other dwarf white pines that would fit into the hedge?" I said, "I would even take a pine of strobus nana," but then they emailed back. But I said, "But while I was looking in your catalog, I noticed that a lot of your dwarf pines are in tubes. I didn't see that size offered in the blue shag, but I would like to have a tube if you have one." She said, "I'm not sure." Then emailed back that I found one. There's one left, and it looks rough. She said, "But that's because it's been in that tube so long. We should have bumped it up to a gallon, and it's got great buds. It looks like it's really just going to take off. Would you take it?" I said, "Yes, for a third the price and for a better system with a more flexible root that I can actually stretch out. Sure, take that." So this is on its way to me, and that's Forest Farm out in Oregon. It's been 30 years we've been ordering from them. We've always had nice plants. Hey, Priscilla. Hey, Greg. Let's see. Hi, Bernice. If anybody's got any questions, this is the chance to speak up. There's only a few of us here, so if you can just turn your microphone on, you can talk. We'll find out what happens if people talk up against each other. We haven't found that out yet. I don't think it feeds back, it just is noisy. Diane sent this in to say, and this is a follow-up to, I'm not sure if we've had it on Friday or if it was just one of the email questions, but she wanted to know if she planted the Easter, the bulbs that you buy in pots at Easter time, the forest bulbs. Could you do that? Could you plant them outside? And I said, yeah, if you plant them outside, plant them deeper. Wait until it's warm enough that they won't freeze. But a lot of those bulbs are not bred for longevity. They're bred for doing well forced in a pot. So don't expect much. And this is what came up. She said, all I got is a couple of leaves on each of them after a year in the ground last year. She said, so I don't believe these were very good for us to work with. And another Diane sent in her bleeding hearts, burning hearts, Heliopsis burning hearts, which has a dark leaf, and the flower is brilliant. It's a brilliant deep orange. It's Heliopsis has been one of my favorite plants since I grew it from seed. Summer Sun was the variety. It was all gold 40 years ago. It's a plant that starts blooming in July, a good sturdy perennial, and just keeps on going. If you deadhead it, it just blooms right into frost. and it's sturdy and it doesn't spread by runners. It does spread by seed. So if you let it go to seed, you're going to get seedlings coming up. But anyway, she said this, you said that it will bloom again if you cut it back. When do you go about cutting it back? So I must have misspoken when we were talking. I don't cut it back. I deadhead it. So when it blooms the first time, before everything goes to seed, it just as the flowers are fading, I take off those flowers and it just keeps on blooming. So it's called Heliopsis or false sunflower burning hearts. And it's a goodie. It's a goodie. Elizabeth, are you here? Let's see. Elizabeth would be, nope, she would be ahead of the grade. Okay, we'll take Ruth. Ruth, go ahead and talk. And just click your microphone on. All I can do is send you.
I got it. Yeah, I was trying to type it, but it was taking me forever to type. It's a vegetable question. When my bean seed packet says 60 days to maturity, for instance, is that 60 days till I get green beans to eat, or 60 days until they're dry beans that can be, stored and stuff?
So until you get green beans to eat, unless they're specifically marketed as beans for drying, it's until you can harvest a bean, an edible bean.
Okay, thank you.
And it counts from planting time. So yeah, if you give it the right conditions, it should sprout and come up. If Elizabeth was here, but she's not, we've been talking about autumn crocus. A couple of weeks ago, I showed you Star of Bethlehem and indicated that one of the ways to tell the difference between its leaves and crocus leaves is the stripe on the Star of Bethlehem is rather muted as compared to the crisp line on a crocus. Elizabeth sent me an email and said, but the bottom crocus leaves that I have, they don't have a stripe on them. And I said, oh, that's right. I forgot about autumn crocus. There's a number of crocus species. Two that I know that we've grown are Crocus zonatus, also called Crocus cachianus. So Crocus zonatus and Crocus thomasianus both send up their leaves in the spring and then bloom in the fall, and they are crocuses. And I said, it's been so long since we grew those, they kind of got a little out of hand. So I stopped growing them. There were so many of them, we were constantly having to divide them. I hadn't remembered that they didn't have a stripe on the leaf. Well, then Elizabeth sent this picture, and this is it's a Tulipa uniola, one of the species tulips that's coming up right here with a stripe on the outside edge. It's a very nice species tulip, kind of mid-range. They're blooming mid-season. They're blooming now, and as far as I know, the deer do eat these. Elizabeth, when I answer her, I'll tell her that. Now those leaves, those are called autumn crocus. This big leaf here, and yes, no stripe on them, but it's not actually a crocus. It's actually a plant that's related to daffodils. I think it's in that family. It's uh-oh, come on, you guys, do you know not crocosmia? What the heck? It's colchicum. It's colchicum, and so it's called autumn crocus, but it's not a crocus. But there are autumn crocus. So now that you know that, you guys can go out and run and buy some crocus. But the deer and the rabbits both eat all those crocuses. Darn deer. Thank you, Sue, for letting us know that it made a difference. Her kalanchoe has just not been growing well and not been blooming, and we suggested some things in email to let it dry down more when it's in its resting period in the winter and give it a true night. And now it's looking better and it's blooming. It hadn't bloomed for, I think she said 4 years since it had bloomed. And that can happen, as with what was one? The night blooming cereus that someone wrote us about. If you interrupt the night by putting it in a place where the light gets turned on for a while during the night, it doesn't feel like it's got a 12-hour night. It feels like it's got a 4-hour night, a 2-minute day, and then it's passed. And it changes the chemical composition in the leaves. Things just don't work the same when you break up the night for that plant. And then Greg didn't send a picture, but he's so excited he had to share. And I understand, really. 90 days at room temperature for some seeds, crisper drawer for 90 days, planted and watered them all summer, nothing came up. And that was way last fall. And 6 weeks ago, took them out and was ready to give up. And I think that's necessary. I think you have to be legitimately, honestly giving up before some of these things happen. You got 5 starts out of 20, and I told you you'd probably only get 1 or 2, so that's fantastic. That's fantastic. But 20 months, yeah, not unusual. Gas plants like that, peonies like that, they're They're balky plants, don't want to start. Nancy sent this as also a follow-up to something we were talking about. She's in a new built subdivision, and they planted all the street trees. And she called us, and we went out there with a group of people from our neighborhood, because Nancy used to live in our neighborhood and used to belong to a garden group we have here. We all went out there and we dug around the base of the tree. We dug down to the real flare. We cut several girdling roots that were there. We pruned it back to what we hoped would be good wood. And she said, look what it's, and that was it last summer. And she said, look what it's doing. It's budding out right to the tips. So we picked the right place to cut back to. And it's budding out dormant buds, and that's good. It's going to need energy to keep going. Definitely going to need energy. It's a overcup oak.
Cup oak,
Cup
it said in her note.
Yeah, cup. It might be overcup. Anyway, it's an oak that's not one of the usual ones that are planted here, although it is hardy here. It's not being used all that much. Are there any questions? It's often awful quiet.
No, I saw a hand up when I first came in from Ruth, but it's not up now.
Right, Ruth, we talked with Ruth already. I'm gathering that the dogs have been fed, so we're ready to go, huh, Steve?
Yep, and there's nothing in the chat right now.
Okay, good. So anyone who's come on who happens to be new, I don't think I saw any new names, but if you're new, please recognize that we want anybody with a question to get that question in. We've got some spaces scattered through the presentation to say, here's a place for questions, but you can chat them anytime. Just get your window out and get to the chat and talk to the whole group. Go to the meeting chat. Don't put up my name or Steve's name, because we're not watching that. And if we do, we get all discombobulated. And know that when you hit return, it pops to the top. So you might split your question into different pieces if you hit return. Don't hit return. Not until you're ready to send it. Sorry, Steve, what?
I forgot.
Shoot, I should have known I shouldn't do that. And you could also just talk. It's a lot easier than writing. What Ruth did during the warm-up session. Just raise your hand, and that raise your hand button is in reactions, or it might be in the participants menu, but you find it, you raise your hand, you'll pop to the top of the list that Steve's watching, and he'll be able to say at the next break, okay, John, you're on, you're the first one up.
So Judith has a hand up.
Oh, well, let's take that
Do
question.
we want to start officially since it's 7 and then take her question?
Actually, that's a good idea, so we can introduce ourselves and get that out of the way.
Okay.
I shouldn't phrase that way. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday, our 41st edition.
And all gardeners are welcome, because we want you to come celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. That's what we do.
We're coming to you from GardenAtoZ.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
I'm Jan Makanovich. We're always surprised at what we find on our own screens. If you haven't looked at GardenAtoZ.org, please do. Please send people there to check for answers for questions, because we've been answering questions for over 30 years and writing for 30 years. We've been gardening professionally for 40 years, and we have learned so much because we've talked to gardeners. They ask a question, it makes us learn something that we hadn't heard about before. We hand it back to them, and they end up giving us more information. So go onto the site, look and see what's there, and then come here. On the site, we've got not all the things, but a lot of the things that we've written over those 30 some years. We've put those articles up, and we keep trying to put up more. I'll tell you though that what we're running into more now, week by week, doing our Free for All Friday instead of a weekly column.
Yep.
That we're not spending much time putting it on the website except as a video. So you get to watch videos. But we put these out, our Free for All Fridays. We edit the video to take out that part in the beginning where I fuss around moving things around, and put it onto our YouTube channel, along with a list that's on the website that says, here's the topics we talked about and where to scroll to in the video to find it. So you can find individual topics by searching the site Fridays page. Just go to the Free for All Fridays page and you'll find the list. Just go from the bottom. As long as you can either search the whole page and then find the Friday number, or the Friday number you want to see, you can scroll down to it. The current week's link is always there, so you don't need an invitation for us. Anybody can come. Everybody's invited. More people, the better. More heads to help figure out the questions.
So Judith does have her hand up.
It's a good time. Go, Judith. Sorry for a black screen.
One little question and one big question. Okay, little question. I'll ask the little question in a moment. Big question is, I'm the lawn obsessed person among you, and
Yes,
I'm trying to
talk
put down
about
a
this.
clover lawn. I mean, basically because I'm a total failure at lawns.
I think well over half the people in the
Yeah.
country. I think that applies to half the people in the country. It's just
Yeah.
so
Right.
what's your lawn
So
question?
I'm trying to get ready for a clover lawn and taking a good look at all those bare patches in what used to be my lawn. I'm seeing that basically I have a plantation of chickweed, so I'm digging it up.
Oh,
And it
that's
is a big
hard.
deal.
That's
Yeah, it
hard.
really is a big deal. It's not as hard as it sounds because the soil's wet. But what I'm really afraid of is that in shaking off as much soil as I can from those disgusting weeds, I'm actually just stirring up the weed bed and I'm going to pay for it next year. And
Well,
I'm wondering whether I actually should be worrying about this.
Well, as you dig up a weed, you are disturbing the soil and bringing to the surface seeds that were in the seed bank in the soil and are now going to be near the surface. No getting around that when you pull something up, except to mulch, which you can do, but I'll get back to that in a minute. In addition, chickweed is a cool season plant. It germinated in the fall and bloomed some in the fall and then started blooming early now. And so it's already added seeds all around itself. So even if you just cut it off, it has dropped seeds all around. So one thing that you can do is you can mulch seed in your clover with a mulch on top of it. And the mulch you put around it would just leave some patches. So let's take a spot as big as a dinner plate. One clover plant. I'm sorry, I looked at putting a picture of clover in because our lawn has finally gotten to where our clusters are, as big around as a kid's sled. But one cluster can be in a year's time as big around as a dinner plate. So in each of those patches that's as big as a dinner plate, if you mulched it and left one spot in the middle clear and put your seeds there, you'd have a much better chance of being able to grow a clover lawn without using herbicides to kill the stuff that you don't want. And you'd have to spot spray even that. So get some bags of fine textured mulch. There's one packaged here, and actually I've seen it down in South Carolina too. It's called Steve, what's it called? Soil conditioner. And what it is very finely ground bark. It's used by growers. They mix it with other ingredients, sand and some compost to make potting mix that they sell their plants with. So that's what I would do. Go ahead and dig them up. It's the easiest way to do it. Burn them out, do something with that like that. And then leave an area cleared, maybe as big as an egg. Put your clover seed there rather than scattering it everywhere. Or go ahead and scatter it everywhere, but make sure that some of it falls in each of those holes. And then you can let the clover reach out from there.
Okay, so basically though, I'm ending up digging half of my backyard.
Yeah.
So it's down to dirt at this point. So if I'm understanding you correctly, I should be getting soil conditioner and putting it over everything and then making a small hole to put some of my clover lawn, which is a mix of fescue and clover down. So
Right.
it'll basically be brown for the season.
For part of the season, the clover, when it grows pretty quickly. So it'll get to be half the size of a dinner plate if the conditions are right and you've got it in a place where it can sprout in between, where it's not mulched on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if is the whole yard, did she just say with all bare soil?
The good half of the yard is going to end up being bare soil once I get
I would just spread the seed all over there then, just like regular seeding.
Right. And yes, you can just do the regular seeding, but then what happens when all of those other weeds germinate that have been growing in place of the lawn? Because Judith doesn't mind having lawn and clover mixed together. That's her idea. But having lawn and clover, and chickweed, and the rest of those things is not good. You could look the other way on all the annual weeds, the cool season bittercress and chickweed. You could say, never mind, let them sprout. 'Because eventually we don't get bittercress, for instance, in the lawn. We get it where there's grass and clover. It can't compete. It needs more light than that.
Yeah.
We don't get much chickweed there. The chickweed had a great year this year, and it likes the more open spaces. So
Well,
you could do without the mulch and just spread your seed over the whole area and then rake it. That's what we did. We drag a rake behind us as we go to make sure that there's a little bit of soil and seed mix, because some of that seed does better if it's in contact with soil. And then just let stuff come up.
Oh,
and mow
okay.
it
Well, that's
long.
more simpler and more attractive. So I've heard, I remember a webinar in the past where you recommended just turning soil that you turned up, I mean, grass that you turned up over so that it can actually give back to the soil. I'm afraid to do that with the chickweed infested area, but is there a way that I can compost it?
Sure you can. If you turn it upside down and stack it up, only the stuff right near the surface is going to grow, and only for the year. Chickweed is an annual. It's a cold season plant, so it germinates in the fall, lives until the next spring. But it's not a perennial. It's not like the roots are going to start spreading through the pile. It's only the stuff that's near the surface. So I'd go ahead and pile it up.
Yeah.
We pile up sod that has everything except the running roots that will do even in warm soil, like quackgrass and thistle. I won't put quackgrass and thistle sod into a compost pile. I put them into black plastic bags and lay them out in the hot sun and say, just die in there. I'll let you out when you're soup.
I like that idea.
Yes.
But you're not talking about turning them back into the soil so that they can block the weeds from the legitimate seeds from germinating, right?
No,
Just
I'm not putting them back in. Not until they're slime. When they're slime, then I'll put them on the compost pile.
yay.
I think it was last.
Okay.
I think it was last winter. Maybe it was the winter before. I had
We
20.
need something besides a black screen to look
Oh,
at.
thank you, Stephen. You're always good to tell us about this stuff. Oh no, chickweed. I bring up chickweed right after talking about chickweed. Judith, you had an easy question.
I'll ask it later. I'll give somebody else a chance.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Greg has written, I have one of those lilacs that does not want to bloom. Is there pruning or something I can do to inspire blooming? It's a vulgaris.
If your lilac doesn't bloom, most of the time when we see this, it's either a very old lilac that's got borer issues and it's too weak to bloom, or it's a lilac that's been planted in the shade or the shade has grown over it and it's just too shady to grow. So it's either move it or prune it and rejuvenate it. And unless I know which one it is, we can't even talk about which things we do. But most of the time when they don't bloom, that's the problem. There are some lilacs though that are reluctant bloomers. We were talking to, what's his name, Jess, at Lilacia Park, which is on the west part of the Chicago area. They have a lilac arboretum, Lilacia Park, and they keep everything pruned so that it's no taller than about 6 feet so that the flowers are in your nose. So they prune all the time and they bloom. But when they put in a new lilac, sometimes it doesn't bloom. And if it doesn't bloom by the third year, they pull it out. They don't mess with it. So there are some reluctant bloomers, but most of the ones that we've seen, it's a site condition more than site or pest condition.
Okay. Marcia wants to plant azalea, but she's heard that it's prone to mites.
Depends on the azalea, and yeah, they will get mites.
Depends on azalea and the culture. I mean, the cultural conditions. I
Yep,
mean,
they'll
it's
get
not
lace
just
bug.
the plant, it's everything.
Yeah, lace bug, leaf miners. There are a bunch of things that get into azalea. If you put them in a really good place and get them to grow vigorously, you don't see a lot of problems with them. But Michigan, honestly, if you're in Michigan, is not a good place for most of the azaleas. Most of those plants are species that come from cool like Appalachian low mountain areas, or are very keyed to acidic soils, which is not either case in Michigan. So azaleas in Michigan are always on life support. You're always going to have to watch them for one thing or another. The people who find that they have big problems with sawflies or lace bugs or mites find that out after it's been going on for 4 or 5 years. They didn't look, they didn't know until it got really bad. So if you get an azalea and you watch it, you'll find it. Um, but you won't like, it's kind of like growing roses. You won't like it that you have to look at it every week and say, now what are you doing? But the mites you can control rinsing it off with water. The sawflies you can time it, and hit it with an insecticide or with a soapy water. I mean, there are things you can do.
Bruce forgot about his cannas that he stored from last year, discovered the bag. The corn seemed viable. Is it too late to plant them?
Not at all. In fact, this is the time to plant them. A lot of people plant them too early, and cannas don't like cold soil. It isn't that it'll kill them, but they're not going to sprout and come up. And there's the chance that while they're sitting there still dormant in the soil, that they'll get attacked by something. Once they're growing, their chemical composition is a lot different. So yeah, go put them in now, and just remember you put them in. Remember that they're there, and that you don't plant your annuals on top of them next week.
Well, yeah. Arena also has a hand race now.
Okay. I didn't leave us a place for pretty. Let me, Arena, before we talk, let me just say quickly that nature does fill every vacuum. And people who say to me, why are there so many of them? I mean, one chickweed could cover this area in 12 days, and yet there's 25 seedlings there. This tree, this is a maple, and it's typical of a lot of the maples right now, is showing almost what looks like fall color, and it's not fall color. It's got a heavy fruit set. It was well pollinated for a long period of cool weather this spring. So it's created a huge number of seeds, which are kind of pretty right now, but see, the leaves are just coming out. And that happens sometimes. And right now, the seeds are not ripe. They're not going to fall right now. But right now is fruit drop time for some species. Fruit drop happens when a plant has a heavy seed set. Some of the less well pollinated fruits will not be developing as vigorously, and they get dropped. The plant will literally create abscisic acid and drop them off. This was last year's fruit drop from the maple tree above Diane's yard. She cleaned all that up. She said it was worse than fall. So nature creates a lot of stuff, and all we can do as gardeners is know which ones are the ones that create a lot and try to get ahead of them. This is my friend Teresa's garden, and we're in our fourth year of digging Star of Bethlehem out. I was telling you about this last time we were together. And the problem is now that, do you see the white in the lawn? That's Star of Bethlehem. There's the flowers. That white in the lawn is Star of Bethlehem blooming. Even though it's short and mowed off, it's still managing to bloom and set more seed out there. So, it became a lawn problem as well. And it happens to be a plant that is naturally very aggressive and creates a lot of seed. There's just not much we can do about it except try not to plant that stuff to begin with. Star of Bethlehem, Ornithogalum Ornithogalum umbulatum, Ornithogalum. I was out in our yard wandering around this week, and I noticed, wow, lots of flowers on the holly. Ooh, would it be nice if we had because we haven't had a nice fruit set on these hollies yet. They're big, but I looked, I said, that's great. And then I walked around among the 3 hollies and said, okay, this one's a female. See, the flower does not have stamens with pollen on it. It's just got the ovary. That's what this part is there. That can develop into the fruit if enough pollen hits these stigmas here. They're sticky on the end when they're ripe, ready to be pollinated, and pollen sticks on them, grows through the tube and pollinates the flower, fertilizes the fruit so that it can start growing. And of course, there's a bug there. We'll talk about bugs later. Nothing wrong with that bug. No problem with that bug. It's a leaf miner, but not a problem. These are male flowers. See, there's no button in the middle. There's no ovary in the middle. There's just these things standing up that have pollen at the end of it. And Steve took this picture at a nursery because I said, go you and get us a male holly, or go get a branch from somebody's male holly so we can put some pollen on these plants and we'll add a male holly to it.
I did not take a branch from the nursery.
No, and he said that most of the plants at the nursery didn't have very many flowers on them or weren't flowering yet. And they cost too much for a plant that's a size that we know we're going to have to massacre the roots when we put it in. So we'll order a smaller
one.
Forest Farm or something. But we need one male out there, or we need a neighbor to plant a male. Maybe we can get Nancy next door to plant a male because I'm not sure where I'm going to put it. See the pollen there? And poor female flowers in our yard. No matter which bugs eat pollen and a plant, unless they're going to fly all the way over to Susan's house, which has got to be a quarter of a mile away, and they're not going to do that. They're not going to bring any pollen with them when they come crawling around here. But that's the way it goes. Things that with a lot of seed. I have not been in a garden before that has a lot of dicentra seeds, but seedlings. But then I also had a client that had a lot of gas plant seedlings. I had another client that had hosta seedlings everywhere. It's just the conditions are right sometimes for certain plants, and we get lots of dicentra coming up. What they do is one of them gets big enough and takes over the space. It is the way of the world. And some of them you say, oh, that's cool. And some of them you go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. This is celandine poppy or our native wood poppy. And those are its babies. And it's why it's a good ground cover. It's going to spread. Okay, let's go back to those questions.
Now, Arena had her hand up. It's her
Okay.
turn.
Okay, Irina.
Hello. I was going to ask only 2 questions, but now that you showed those helicopters, I have to ask 3. Can they be composted?
Yes, they can be composted. The ones that come down first are not viable anyway, so there's no problem with it. The ones that come down in the fall, you want to make sure you bury them rather deep because some of them will still sprout.
All right. So my first question is, I asked you before about this soil that they bring for free in Farmington Hills at the dog park.
Right.
Do you know what kind of, you said that it's a recycled soil, and I would like to know what it is because we use it all the time, and I really don't understand what kind of soil it is. They call it compost, but I don't think it is.
It's a number of the municipalities in the Southeast Michigan cooperate in a group called SOCRA, South Oakland County Resource Recovery Authority. And so the yard waste that's picked up within those municipalities goes to a composting site, and there's one in Rochester, I can't remember where the other one is. And they are composted. They grind that stuff up, they turn it with end loaders, they make a very good product. It's compost. Sometimes some of them will add to it sand and sell it as a compost mix. But if you're getting it straight from your municipality, it's probably just compost. They may have added soil to it as they were composting because you had a layer of green, a layer of brown, a little bit of soil because you need the organisms from the soil in there. But it's if you use what you get from them to make a bed, we've done that before. You're going to have to keep adding to it because every year it's going to drop down 2 inches or 3 inches as it decomposes it further.
And that's my second question, because I cannot say I made a mistake because I wanted it. I made 2 beds underneath that, I think what you said, silver maple tree. And I was trying to dig out something out of one bed that I made only 2 years ago, and I barely could do it because the roots, of course, permeate everything. I mean, hosta, there's nothing easier to get out of the soil than hosta. I couldn't lift it with a huge fork.
Right,
Anyway.
once an ace or a maple gets hold of it, it is hard. Maples are very competitive that way. Now, the roots that they grow into the soil that you're doing are not the roots that we tell people to worry about cutting. Think of them as annual roots. Trees like maples grow their main roots, their flare roots out fast and wide, and the main support for those roots and the main carriers of water and nutrients are coming from further out around the tree. But if there's soil that's loose, airy, and has some moisture and nutrients in it closer up, they will grow finer roots off of those roots, and they can grow them and then shed them if they need to. So if you're digging into the roots, you can go ahead and cut those fine roots. Just don't cut the stuff that's close to the trunk. That's that are big diameter roots, broomstick and larger. But
are they going to choke my plants?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what, if you walk into maple woods, there's nothing growing underneath most of those maples. There are a few plants that do pretty well. Some of the ones that are runners close to the surface. I've always thought the big leaf aster was one of them, but we put big leaf aster in our yard and it ran up against the flare root of a serviceberry and stopped dead. I said, wow, a root will stop you. I didn't think that anything would stop you. So there are some things that can grow over roots and exist with roots, especially if they start small. So trillium, for instance, can grow pretty well underneath some trees, but it's because the root is deeper and can very gradually get bigger. whereas some plants have to, especially if the gardener is rating them, they have to grow faster than that to measure up.
So basically, I should just keep adding this soil every year.
Yep, because
If if it's all compost, you'll notice that the bed reduces in size. It goes away. Whereas the soil, if you're getting a lot of soil in there, you might not have to add as much next year.
it's another thing that the woodland plants do really well. A woodland plant that's really well adapted to growing with trees can every year grow its roots earlier in the year than the tree begins growing roots. So trout lily and spring beauty and some of the bulbous anemones, they wake up early, get close to the surface. Even trillium, they're close to the surface but not up yet, and they're receiving light, and they're growing before the tree is growing. So they grow, they put their roots into the new stuff that's made from fallen leaves, or in your case, compost that you've added on top. They grow their roots and they claim their space first. And once their roots are in the space, taking things out of it, the tree roots are not going to fill that soil so heavily. So there's this timing going on. You might want to switch some of your species and look around for some of the other shade loving plants.
Well, actually, unfortunately, we had beautiful pine trees that had afternoon shade there, but our neighbors cut them down, and now it's all kind of changed. So I have to see what will do well there. And that's another question, last one, I promise. So I got this, it's called Cherokee Brave dogwood, and I want to plant it about, I would say it would be like about 8 feet away from the trunk. But for the
If you can find
few hours in the afternoon, for sure, it will be exposed to afternoon sun. Will it survive?
Cherokee Brave is a Florida dogwood, and they can grow in the sun as long as they've got ample water. Don't let them go dry.
All right.
So that's all right, but you've got to find a place that's large enough for the root system once you spread it out. And that means you might have to move it. You might have to try digging, find out that there's too many large roots there, and you might have to move around a little bit. Not much you can do except that.
No, I dug up a hole, very nice hole, and there are no big roots, and no roots actually at all. And it's nice.
Good.
So,
okay.
So it will make it. Okay. Thank you.
It can make it. Yeah. Whether it will, none of us ever knows until we try it, right?
Right.
Let's move on. We got other questions, Steve, or should we?
Yeah. Therese wants to know if I want to prune my lilac back to 5-6 feet, shall I do it right after the blooms are done?
Yeah, we're going to talk about pruning here, and I'll get to that if I can get through one of our prepared articles, I'll get to the places where I can actually switch screens.
Okay.
Around. I'll do that pruning of a lilac.
Okay, so we'll get to the pruning in a minute. Follow-up question, Judith, on her chickweed. Would it be helpful to put down topsoil and some compost to replace the soil loss with the chickweed?
You can definitely do that. You can definitely add. So if you took out a wheelbarrow full of chickweed, a wheelbarrow full of compost would be good. It'd be good, best to be clean compost, though. You're taking off the surface soil that those roots were into. That tends to be the A horizon, the very heavy organic layer horizon. So put organic matter down, and if it's clean compost that's just been made recently, it's not going to have seeds in it.
All right. And Suzanne said she sent an email with photos just a while ago, and we did just get them.
We did
Is
see
there a
it.
chance you saw them? We saw them, but we can't do anything with them. That's part of this is what Janet sets up. We get those questions earlier in the week, and she has time to set up things.
But we do
Something that
answer. We do answer all the time, though, Suzanne. So don't worry. You
Yeah.
don't have to wait until next time. We'll answer the email because we go through well, I try to do it daily. We've had a little bit. We had a lot of a plumbing problem this week that we've been dealing with, plumbers coming in and out and stuff going on. So I'm behind on that. But we have a routine of every day looking at the emails, answering them, and some of the ones that we answer directly to people, we then put onto a Free for All Friday or one of our webinar sessions. It just depends on what topics they are, but we try to answer everything that comes in. So we'll send.
We answer the emails, but they may not show up on the Fridays.
Yeah.
And so just to let you know.
Okay. Curly
Okay,
chives,
we're good now.
curly chives and woolly thyme. Okay. Wait, what did I? Oh, okay. We want to talk about violets as we're talking about weeds and chickweed. If you call somebody a shrinking violet, I always wonder about that. Try ever expanding would be the better description. And they have a diabolical tactic to persist. I was talking with Sonia. She called me and she said, I have a garden gripe. I said, what's your garden gripe? And I was loading this bag, dragging this bag out to the curb where I weeded the neighbor's lawn. And I looked in and said, yep, some of these plants are pretty diabolical. Dandelion, for instance, has enough water, and any plant has enough water in the leaves that it's still alive for a while after you pull it out. There were not seeds, uh, mature seeds on these dandelions when they went into that bag, but they've been moist enough that they could finish doing what they were doing, and they did. So there are, nature's got so many ways to keep on going. So Sonia's gripe, she said, was violets. I said, oh, well, we have Labrador violets and they're native and we're letting them go. She said, well, I would mind if they were Labrador violets. At least they have colorful leaves and they're almost evergreen. The brown here, now that we're in spring, the brown is last year's leaves that were purple right through in January, almost into February.
Yep.
And they're blooming now. She said, but the violets that I've got, they don't even bloom. Mom, I have watched and they don't bloom. And I weed them out and they do this. She said, tell me that violet didn't bloom and yet there's seedlings all around it. Well, two things. One, the seeds live for a while in the soil. And number two, violets do this real tricky thing that they bloom once in the spring and then they bloom again, but nobody sees them bloom again. And the smaller ones are big enough by that second season to do the second bloom again. The second set of flowers don't open. They self-pollinate, stay closed. There's a capsule that pops open later. And she said, I found one. You're right. They do. I said, yep, they do that. They have their way. So that was a flower. Well, that's a seed pod now from a flower, but that flower never opened. It just stayed close to the ground at the base of the lilac of the violet and pollinated itself. Don't ask me how nature figures these things out, and those seeds will be all around it. So if you're trying to get violets out, you have to know that any small pieces that you leave, despite the fact that they're not blooming, are going to spread more seed around, and you need to get some other seeds started quicker to fill that space and choke out the violets. Okay, what questions do we have otherwise?
Nothing.
Oh, good.
Nothing's come up.
Well, not good, because we have a lot of questions coming up. And when things get into like Steve's penstemon seeding into my woolly thyme there, I go, okay, I can leave one because that looks nice, but it's going to try to drop a zillion little tiny seeds into every open space in my woolly thyme. So we'll see whether you can keep it or not, Steve. So we might have to take that one out of there.
Yeah.
And when things grow like weeds, as they are doing right now, herbivores, especially insects, now get the message that the salad bar is open. Something that was like this, not even 4 weeks ago, is now like this. And as the plants came up and the temperatures, the heat accumulated, the herbivores that eat these plants come along too. They've evolved together. And we personally want that to happen with columbine and with our pascflower and with the penstemon. There are some pests we don't want to see, but you got to take the good with the bad if you want to have it as a wildlife garden. So this is our native woods anemone quinquefolia for 5 leaflets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's been blooming for a while and it's going to go dormant. And if you look closely at it, it's got a pest problem. Well, it's got pests. I'm not able to focus my camera as well, and I didn't think to put Steve out there. Can you see the little antennae sticking out here? These are sap sucking of some kind. They're larvae. I think they're a type of aphid. I don't know that though, but I do know that we've watched this woods anemone for 8 years now, and it does not have a pest problem. It is not slowed down. It's not disfigured. It blooms fine. So it's not a problem. It is food for our birds. Might look tiny to us, but that's something that a chickadee can come and grab and eat and then regurgitate to the young ones when it gets back. And there's so many cool things out there. The numbers that I've seen say that about 90% of the insect species that are out there in your yard, and as we were talking in environmentally easy on the environment webinar, there are probably several thousand species of insects in your yard. And of those several thousand, 90% of them are not eating your plants to any damaging way, or they're preying on other insects, or they're helpful in some other ways. This guy or lady, I'm not sure which it is, this is a milkweed beetle. It's crawling on lupin because it's coming up out of the soil where it spent the winter as a mature beetle in the duff, in the debris. And now it's going to come up and eat milkweed leaves. And we all know that milkweed grows like a weed and it can handle being eaten. Probably the only problem with a milkweed beetle is that it's a bully. If there's a monarch caterpillar eating on the leaf, it is likely to get shoved right aside by the beetle. But look
Or
at it.
eaten.
Or, well, eaten if they're eggs, I think.
Little.
Yeah, yeah. But look at this guy. It's beautiful, isn't it? Look at those joints on the legs and the
Antennae.
Yeah, beautiful. And some things that are a problem for us are not a problem for the plant. This is an Annabelle, not an Annabelle. Sorry, we don't have an Annabelle. This is an Hydrangea arborescens. It's the white snowball hydrangea. It's our native species. And if you look at it even here from 12, 15 feet away, you can see that there's white on the tops of some of the branches. That's hydrangea leaf tire. It's a native moth. It has just one generation a year. It means sometime in May, the adults are going to come, they're going to pupate where they've been in the soil over the winter. They're going to emerge and fly out, mate, and lay eggs on the tip, on the growing tip of the plant. The caterpillar, when it hatches out, knits the top two leaves together, and the tip keeps growing inside those knitted leaves, and the insect eats it. But it only eats it for about 3 or 4 weeks. Then it drops out into the soil, and it's not back until next year. And you can just clip off either while it's living in there, or you can clip off the damaged stuff afterwards. We're leaving them alone. Native birds know how to look for indications like this, and you'll find, especially some of the bigger ones, the jays and the crows, ripping things apart. You go, why are you ripping up my plants? Well, probably because they were chasing an insect in there. They're doing you a favor. In the on the far side of our driveway, we've got a deep culvert, deep swale, and we've got our plants that like the wet. And for some reason, the marsh marigold, which likes the wet, has seeded itself up onto the edge that's dry. Well, that's okay. But I will look at it once in a while as it goes dormant, especially just to make sure that it's okay. And I looked at it the other day and went, oh, what are you? I didn't know that you had any insects that land on you. And I told some people at our library garden group, I said, I have to look up what kind this is, but I suspect it's a sawfly, and it might be the one that lays eggs on the pines. And these two are doing the dirty here. They're mating. But it's not, as it turns out, it's not pine sawfly. That's already come out. And a sawfly, it's a fly. You can tell flies by the eyes the time. So this is the female. She has the smaller eyes, big eyes over here. The pine sawfly comes out earlier than this. It was out probably a week or 10 days ago and laying its eggs to hatch out and eat pine needles. This one is a snipe fly. It's a predatory fly. As a larva in the debris in the soil, or some types of snipe flies, there's a bunch of species of them, several hundred. Some of the snipe flies are aquatic as larvae, so they're developing in the water. They're all predatory insects, so they're eating other insects. As adults, they eat other insects. They'll attack them on the fly. So you don't want to look at something and say, oh, there's an insect, and start trying to kill stuff right away. With the internet, the way that it's set up now, if you can take a picture of it, and if I can take a picture of it with a point and shoot camera, I'm sure you can get a picture of it with some of these great cameras that are on the phones and stuff, and then send that picture into Google Images or Bing Images search. You're going to end up with Bug Guide or iNaturalist or Wikipedia or one of the nature centers telling you what that is. And then you can figure it out from there, just how much you want to do with it. I was kind of glad to see snipe flies, and that one's called the common snipe fly, probably. Because right now, this week, 3 days ago, I said, oh, there they are. Our boxwoods have been in trouble. Here's the new foliage coming out. But you can see the old foliage down here is disfigured, discolored, with a brown and yellow in it down there. And that's from boxwood leaf miner. And boxwood leaf miner lays its eggs as a sawfly, as a little, you'll see it in a little natty thing. It's going to lay eggs in this new leaf, and the larvae are going to live inside the leaf eating until next spring when they hatch out. And I need to stop my share and look at a movie in order to show this for you properly. Stop share. Stop share. There we go. And I'm going to go to I forgot to tell you to set this one up, Steve. Always something, right?
Always, who cares?
The thing that you need to know about boxwood leaf miner, it's important to know this, is a visual thing and has to be looked at in order to say, okay, I've got it. I've figured that out. Okay, so looking at that boxwood, anytime in May, early May, if you're in warmer regions, take a look. Do you see what's going on there? Whoop, come on, play. See all those little tiny gnats? Can't necessarily see them if you walk by quickly, but if you walk by and just rustle your boxwood, when you see gnats flying, you're in the week when, if you want to control leaf miner in boxwood, now's the time to do it, because they're inside the leaf, which means you can't get to them. Birds can, but you can't get to them. You can't get to them when they're eating inside the leaf very easily, not unless you use a systemic insecticide, which we don't recommend. It makes the whole plant poisonous. Pollen, everything's poisonous. But when the adults, which come out of the leaf, now I'll go back to the other. I hope you saw that. Raise your hand.
I did. I saw it.
Okay, I think probably it was there. There we go. So
There it is.
inside the leaf, they were eating in the leaf, and they ate. So there are 6 or 7 or 8 of them inside here. Ate this portion of the leaf on the inside, and then they emerged just this week. They pushed out as they were in their pupa cases and dropped out of there, just like the butterfly drops out of the chrysalis when you're watching your butterflies emerge. They dropped out and they're flying around. There's one of them over there. Little tiny gnats. Great food. They're not native, but I have seen chickadees poking around in boxwoods. I think that they're eating them. And there are a lot of them. A spider set himself up in that shrub and has grabbed as many of them as he could get a hold of, or she could get a hold of. There's other things going on with this boxwood and other people's boxwood. This white fuzzy stuff that you see on the tips of the new leaves is probably boxwood psyllid. And you're going to look at some little tiny dots here. They're just little tiny dots, but this one I can almost see the antennae on it, the biting end of it. But psyllid is a insect like an aphid, and they make the end of the leaves cup and curl. So I looked at this boxwood, which I should have cut down. It has a lot of leaf miner in it. It's just a bad problem, especially if it's in the neighborhood. I was going to cut it down before it started leafing out, and I didn't. So I said, well, I'll get to you. So now what am I going to do? Here's all these leaf miners laying eggs in all your new foliage. So I decided, and this is entirely me, I don't think you'll find this in any book, I cut half of it all the way back, because I was going to cut it all the way back earlier on. I cut half the shrub all the way back. There's this stubs that I left. And I cut it back so that there's room to grow from there out to here. If I didn't have that much room, I would cut it back further. And I'm going to leave all that I cut off, I'm going to leave in the can right next to the plant. I'm hoping that some of these sawfly adults will lay their eggs here on the stuff that's going out. In a week or so, I will, when I don't see any more sawfly adults flying, I will cut the rest of it back. And by then, there'll probably be some dormant buds coming on these branches to keep the plant going until later. And that's my solution because I don't want to use a pesticide. I do want the insects. I just don't want a heavy enough population that it's actually hurting the plant. And I was going to cut this one back anyway. It's gotten too big. Now, this is a willow that I cut back all the way to the ground last May. So May of 2024. I cut this all the way down to the ground. I'm in the midst of cutting it when I thought to take this picture. I've taken the big branches off. Here's the ends of the big branches, and I'm about ready to cut the main trunk right out. And that's what grew back last year. About 6 feet of stem in all directions. Lots of nice, colorful foliage. That's why I cut it back. This year, I cut back 3 others. This one right here, that's what I cut it back to, just stumps. And I did that in May, the middle of May. It's now 2 months later, and this is what's coming up. Now that, because this viburnum that seeded itself in on the neighbor's edge, this viburnum is now shading this, that might not come back as vigorously as its buddy 10 feet over to the right, but it's going to come back. And even if I cut it back later in the year, it's going to come back. Life will find a way. Okay, what else have we got? Questions?
Okay, Teresa's asking, best way to amend soil that has existing bushes, trees, and roots, but soil is rock hard. Understand may take some time, but appreciate, excuse me. Appreciate any suggestions to make the soil workable. Would pounding a spike into the ground, then adding composted mulch or help?
Adding compost and water is your best bet. If that doesn't soften the soil fairly quickly, then yes, making some holes, drilling some holes or pounding some holes in order to make the moisture and the air layer go a little bit further down is your best bet.
I'd use auger, even if it's a bulb auger, just a little.
Yeah.
Pour some compost in there and let the water and that work.
A heavy layer of organic matter, and then it has to have water too. If you don't add the water, there's the formula for life is heavily toward water. So you have to do that. We've had good luck with making soil better, but I've also seen soil. I saw someone put mulch on top of, that was a long time ago now, on top of a beautiful woods, pretty thick with trees, and she didn't put any water down. And 2 years later, you could still find all of the original mulch that was there. I mean, it didn't break down at all because it was so dry under those trees. So water.
Yep.
Okay.
Suzanne's wondering what's this genus species of our woolly thyme?
It's Thymus pseudolaniginosus, and I'll type it in, Steve, while you look and see if there's anything else, because Steve and I have learned our plant names by writing them out time and time again, but I don't think that Steve has written this one out.
It's got more than 3 letters. I'm in trouble. 4 letters, maybe. Yeah. Tree says the idea with the willows is brilliant. Great, and thanks for the soil stuff.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yep. And the name is now in the chat of the time. That's all we have right now.
All right, then we'll keep on going. I'm so pleased with our native perennial lupin. I'm so pleased that it's growing.
Oh, it's looking so good.
And seeding itself around. It belongs in pure sand, and that's what we've got, and I'm so glad it's there. It does hold water so prettily. Okay, if you're training a plant, a vine would be here where we're trying to get the vines to grow where we want them to grow, or an espalier that you're growing flat or 2-dimensional. Laying down is one of the hardest things to get a plant to do. Wisteria, this is our native American wisteria, Wisteria floribunda. If it's growing in the wild, it's going to grow up, whatever it can grow up, it's going to grow up until it can't grow up vertically anymore. And then once it lays down, it begins making flowering stems. So if you can train it to lay down at a lower level, at any level, that's where it will bloom. So this one at Chicago Botanic Garden, those are all flower getting ready to open. They have, the staff has pruned it. You can see a cut here and a cut here. They keep it from going up. So this branch right here, this year, that branch will get cut back. so that the only branches, and they'll do it in July, do it in March and July, and that way it blooms better. It's called more breaks. When you bend a branch to the horizontal, you'll tend to get more flowering branches on it. And so I was looking at some beech trees that well over 10 years ago, I looked to see at the Morton Arboretum, they had put up a form and were using purple leaf beeches to cover the form. Well, we were just there, this is now. And I looked and I said, well, that was 10 years ago. How come these beeches, beeches grow 18 inches a year? Well, how come these beeches haven't covered the arbor yet? There's where they were new when I first saw them. And they're not much further up than that now. And that's because it's a great idea to use them as an espalier, but look what's happening. One side is better than the other. Look what's happening as they bend the branches down. They're getting more breaks. They're getting side branches that want to grow up because this plant, the beech, has pretty strong apical dominance. It wants to be an upright plant. So if you want this beech to cover it, you're going to have to not only train the tip ends to grow, you're going to have to keep cutting back what grows up. And that slows down the process. Eventually they'll get there. They need to take the tips
Yep.
and bend them over. Now I have a reluctant honeysuckle. This is Harlequin honeysuckle, and it wants to keep flopping away from the arbor. So I train it through the pieces of the arbor and up to the top, and it finds a way to get itself out, and it comes back down again. Some plants do that, but if they do that, the part that is growing downward is going to have smaller leaves, probably no flowers where it's growing down. Laying down is hard for them to do. There's both the natural tendency of the plant. This is a cotoneaster. I think it's called black cotoneaster. And its natural form is upright. It's a vertical plant. You are not going to be able to train that plant to grow down very well. If you want to grow something over a wall, then you need a cotoneaster that's actually genetically able to do that because it doesn't have very strong apical dominance. It just does that. This is a rock spray cotoneaster, which tends to be able to grow and bloom. There's fruit all along these stems here. And some other plants do that. Weeping, that's what weeping trees are all about. They have no strong apical dominance and they're able to grow and cover walls and things. This is a cherry, weeping cherry. I have proposed to Steve and he says, go ahead, go for it. I have decided to espalier and pleach 4 tricolor beeches along our driveway. I'm going to make them into a living fence by bending some of the side branches from plant A to reach plant B, and then rubber banding them together with a wound in between each part of the bark so that they literally grow together there and become a woody framework that grows across the side. But I have to wait until I have branches that are long enough to meet between the 2 plants. And I'm not going to pull the top one over because I want it to keep growing strongly up at the same time. Be an interesting process. Trees have pretty strong apical dominance. This was an artist's exhibit that they put together at the Massachusetts Art Museum. MoMA, is it called? Anyway, they planted trees in tubs and then turned them upside down. And here, what was it, Steve, 4 or 5 years old when we saw
4
it?
years.
Yeah,
4 years at that time.
You see what it's doing. And the tree says, no, up is where I need to grow. Its natural habit is to grow with the tip above the rest, and it's going to turn itself around. But
And they had quite a few, and every one of them did that.
yeah. So climbing hydrangea, it's taken us about 4 years to get it to accept going up because it's quite willing to spread on the ground out until it gets more light. Thank you very much. I'd like more light. So it's going to grow toward the stronger light, and I had to keep digging out and cutting off pieces that are going this way until I got it to attach itself to the tree. And then the deer didn't help. They came and pulled some of the branches away just as they'd gotten stuck on.
Yep. Teresa's asking us, do we have a favorite Japanese maple that remains under 8 feet or under with beautiful color? There, a lot of the weeping maples, the weeping Japanese maples, you have a really good chance of keeping 8 or under. They will grow taller and bigger if you don't prune them. They both, both the
Water-
red leaf and the green leaf have great color. I mean, it's just, I like the waterfall, the green that has the beautiful green foliage as it comes out, very similar to the epimedium we're seeing down there. And then it goes to an orangey reddy fall color that's spectacular.
It's pumpkin in the late fall, and it's a
Yep.
lace leaf. It's a very finely dissected leaf. And that one, I first met that plant in down in Royal Oak. I kept passing a house that had this plant, and I ended up stopping one day, walking up, knocking on the door, and say, I have to know what this maple is out here." And the woman who answered the door reached next to her to like the piece of furniture right next to the door on the inside, picked up a book and handed it to me. She said, "It's this Japanese maple." I guess a lot of people asked her questions, but it was 40 years old and it was about 6 feet tall. It was about 10 feet across and was just spectacular. So it's been one of my favorites for a long time. But there are others. There are some very tiny ones.
There's some newer upright that probably will take longer to get over 8 feet. I mean, it's hard to keep an upright tree under 10 feet. I mean, it just is.
I've met others, including some that our friend who collects Japanese maples has one that is only 2 feet tall, but he does prune it every few years to make sure it stays 2 feet tall and still looks like a tree rather than a bush. So
Yeah.
I don't know too many of the others.
But they're out there.
Mass Mocha. Thank you, Judith. I knew it had an MO in it, but it couldn't be MoMA like New York. Yep.
Sonia was wondering, since she has been told you shouldn't grow tomatoes next to cucumbers, should they be in different soil?
I've heard that same thing, Sonia, but I've not respected it, and I don't know whether they would have grown better if I'd had them separated. It just made sense that year to put the tomatoes there and the cucumbers next to them, and that's the way that it went. But there are plants that don't like each other, but I didn't know that those were two of them, or I haven't seen evidence that they're really going to make a big difference.
All right, nothing other than Judith telling us where the museum was.
Museum is, yeah. Our rain garden at the Waterford Library looks really wonderful. Lots of
Tree
things.
said she does grow her tomatoes next to each other with success.
Next to cucumbers.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Didn't say that particularly.
Okay. We've told you a few times that we play the game called See Who Wins, especially when we're doing a ground cover area. We put plants together and we'll see who wins. And it can be a brutal test, and probably it's not easy for the garden, for the plants either. I thought I'd show you a couple of, for instances, and the reasons that I say to people, we put things together and we'll see who wins. We have kind of a litany. We say that wood wins, height wins, evergreen wins. So for instance, here, I'm not concerned in this area that's supposed to be a shrub and ground cover area, that it's not showing many shrubs because they're there. There's a spirea back here. It's one of the Sonoma and spirea hybrids, and a variety that's got variegated leaves. There is a Katsura right here, which probably won't stay there for long because it's not a native, but it's a tree. And despite the fact that things are growing all around it, the wood is going to win because it can stand upright later in the fall. And there's a spice bush over here. So as long as I keep the weeds down under here, I'm going to let the ground covers fight it out. Our wood poppy, the Asian Solomon seal with a variegated leaf, our native Geranium maculatum, and bleeding heart over there. The Geranium maculatum has decided that it can live with being mowed. And I thought, well, that's fine. It's
Yeah.
bigger and coarser than clover, but we'll take it. Let's see what it does. Maybe it'll bloom like violets for us. We'll see. But there's the spice bush. It's I cleared around it for the first 2 years it was there because it was only 6 inches tall. But it has now got itself above the top and it's not going to go anywhere anymore. There's also hostas in there. And some people would say, well, that's a nice hosta. You're not going to let, yes, I'm going to let it grow over the top because come post bloom time for the wood poppy, the stems are not so strong and it's not growing anymore. And I think the hosta is just going to keep pushing it out of the way. It has.
I think the hosta will push it out of the way.
Yeah, it has so far.
Yeah.
Evergreen wins. This is our favorite shady kind of dry area ground cover. This is Brunnera, the straight green leafed kind. And it has moved out from the shade into the sun, But and although it seeded itself into a blank space in the snow on the mountain, no, snow in summer, Cerastium tomentosum, this is evergreen. I don't believe that it's going to win. And I don't think it's going to win over the juniper here, but we're going to see. See, there's a rug juniper here. And it seeded itself in, but I don't think it's going to make it. This will be interesting here. This is Sweet Sicily, the ferny looking thing. I like ferns, but I did not like the ostrich fern that was in all over our property when we got here. I took all the ostrich fern out. I put in Sweet Sicily, which spreads not quite as aggressively. And there's hostas in there. And the geranium, macrorhizum, the big root geranium, put itself out there. And so that's interesting because this is evergreen. But this one is a little bit taller. We'll see who wins here. I am worried though, because I just put our double bloodroot in order to rescue it from being overtaken by other plants, and we like the double bloodroot a lot. It's got sentimental. I just put it out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And as this advances, I might move those. I might just move them out of the way of the coming tide. We'd like to have this corner be evergreen. This is Bergenia. So I put it there. I said, let's see how I can handle the being in the dry, because we have an ephemeral, that's our woods anemone, the anemone crankifolia, and a meadowsweet that expands as the summer goes on. It's a filipendula. But this area could be Bergenia. We'll see whether it can beat out the bottlebrush buckeye and the Solomon seal. See who wins. I was very amazed at this. I put one plant of Phlox divaricata into this area, one plant. And I was sure that the groundhog would eat it all, so why am I bothering? But despite the fact that I put 5 plants of the all green Brunnera out here, despite the fact that there was only one plant there, that has held its own and seems to be continuing to hold its own. So
I think it may end up being more dominant than we expect.
Yeah, a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay, Carol would like you to repeat the phrase you said about winning. Height, wood,
I think wood wins, height wins, and evergreen wins.
evergreen. Yep. Yeah. Ruth has wild ginger and hosta coexisting in the same space.
Yeah, the best of them, like those two. One
We're
of
a
them,
little bit past 8 o'clock too, but
okay,
still.
so I'll wind it up. Yeah.
Arena says, why not ostrich fern? I think we took it out of that area.
We took out all the ostrich fern because it runs too vigorously, and I was putting mulched paths in. It would keep filling the paths. It does not respect boundaries at all. I'd rather have something that moves by seeding itself around than by running underground and popping
Yeah, in
up.
the right area, it's a perfect plant. In the wrong area, it's a beast.
Yeah, but a lot of factors make something a good ground cover. Back underneath our crabapple, where I'm also using Brunnera as the ground cover, Brunnera and hellebore, and I think it will eventually be all hellebore. Oh, I left both pictures in. Look how much better Steve does with a picture than I do. In that area, if you look here, there's a bare area with light green in it. That's all the calendula or pot marigold annual coming up where it grew before. And I let it come up there, just thin it out. But this bare area right here, the only reason that's bare is because the leaves of those Brunnera, when they lay down in the fall, are a very effective mulch. They form a layer of overlapping leaves, and they've kept the seedlings from coming up in here. And they'll just move themselves into that area.
Do we know the name of that fox?
Phlox divaricata, it's probably got a variety name because there's but they're naturally occurring varieties. There's some white ones, some purple ones, some pink ones. Phlox divaricata.
We saw a lot of them at Chicago and Morton that were really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice. When is a good time to split woodland fox that has gotten bigger? Like to move it to other areas?
Almost any time. It will. It's got a kind of a woody crown, but it also puts its elbow down and roots. So you can at any time clip between the mother plant and where the elbow has rooted and take that part out. But you can do that pretty much any time that you need some of it.
Yep.
Okay.
And Ruth saw some of the prettiest hellebores she's ever seen in Portland this March.
Oh,
Portland is an area
Pacific
that a lot of growers are at. They're going to have wonderful hellebores, Japanese maples,
Yeah, the founders of Forest Farm, the nursery we like so much, they were in Livonia with the nursery, and they moved to Portland because it's got such a longer and more varied growing season than we have in terms of the kinds of things you can grow. So we shall move on then, and I'll pick this up where we left off because we can do that. It's all about Fridays.
Yep.
Let's see. I'll only go
Yep.
to these. These
Free
are
for
all
all. Do what we want.
these are all things that are growing together, and we'll come back. I'll come back to them. Aren't they pretty? Big leaf aster and the dwarf Solomon seal.
You could see right where the aster's line of where the root was. It doesn't go to the right.
Stopped right there. They said, nope, we're not growing over that root. It'll be interesting to
Wow.
see what happens when the big root geranium reaches them. We'll do that later.
Yep.
Yeah. So what we want to do right now, let's go here and say, let's see what do we have. Training. Oh, I promised pruning. So we'll do this, but we'll say goodbye first and then come back to the pruning your lilac and your early bloomers. Okay.
You're going to do it tonight, right?
Yeah, I'll come back to it after we have an official sign off so that I can make sure that we do tell people what's up. Oh, look at that wallflower. It's such a color. No color like wallflower. Chiranthus, an annual, cool season annual. So that's it for this Free for All Friday.
Thank you all for being here.
Next time we'll be here is for number 42, next Friday, that's May 23rd. And it's not too late to subscribe to our weekend walkabout webinars. Right now you can view 175 webinars. The two that are the newest on there are the lesser known native plants from April of this year and Easy on the Environment from just last week or so in May. And you can come Saturday, June 7th for What Makes a Good Garden Plant with Richard Hawkey from Chicago Botanic Gardens, which is a wonderful place to go and see plants, to go and compare to your house, how they grow at your house or how they grow even there. These are viburnum, was it a
Carlesii.
Viburnum carlesii, Korean spice viburnum growing on either side of the path, just feet apart. You can see through this one, but not this one. And if you look at their flowers, the flowers are individually bigger because there's more sun on one side than there is on the other side. And it might seem like a minor difference, but what we want are the flowers and the scent, and you get it that way. And at Chicago Botanic Garden, they have a plant evaluation center. And for 40 years, almost 40 years, Richard Hawkey has been running tests and publishing information on what grows best in the Midwest. And what they'll do is get perennials, and they'll get minimum of 5 in each group. They'll get 4, 5, 6 kinds of a perennial and lay them out in a line and let them grow. They keep the weeds out, they keep them watered, but otherwise they just let them grow, and they evaluate them weekly, and they write up their findings and send them out to all of us who really need it. There's nobody better to tell us what's a good plant and what's not a good plant. And they do shrubs as well as perennials now. It's a great place to go and look. There's their new oak leaf hydrangea test planted out. They grow the perennials for 5 years. They grow the woody plants for at least 5 years, and they don't evaluate them until they see how they make it over the long run, because they might make it through one winter and not make it afterwards. They might do well one summer and not the next summer.
They have a huge amount of observations.
It's a great place to go.
Quickly, do we have any caterpillars on our pussy toes or pearly everlasting yet?
We didn't see any on Wednesday.
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay.
So let's go to that early bloom, early cut. It is time to prune. If you're going to follow the classic rules, then you prune what blooms in spring right after it blooms. And you prune if you want to prune or if you need to prune. At a maize, you're stuck with it. Somebody's got to prune all that maize to keep it that size. I would rather grow things to their full size. This is a yew that I dragged around from the front of the house. It had been kept cut as a little globe, about 3 feet high and 3 feet around. It took it a few years to get back to its natural state, which is a nice feathery 20-foot shrub when it gets going. This is a dwarf yew, and that's as tall as it's going to get. But look at that feathery shape. Isn't that wonderful? I would rather do that. But if you want them to do something different, then, for instance, here at the Waterford Library, I can't help it that it was snowing the day we were there to work. But I took a picture of it this spring and went, okay, the Viburnum carlesii, the Korean spice viburnum, like a lilac, has just finished blooming. You've gotten too tall and too wide for that space. It's been 2 years since we pruned you, so it's time for us to do it again. So we're going to take off the height and the width. And we did that just this week after it finished blooming. I had to add some pictures together because I always take pictures of that area when I get in, but for some reason I didn't have the whole thing. This is the end of last year, and there's the height up there. There's the width. It's been a gap in it ever since we took out a main branch that was crossing, and it's filling it in gradually. We took it down to here. You might be able to see the white marks on the bigger brick, and if the plant was above them before, we're now down below that area and we're in smaller. So now we've got room for our because this is our annual area, and to let our ground covers grow back out from underneath the arbor where we had to take them out to raise the level of the bed. We did it before we put in the annuals. We'll put in our annuals in early June because we need to walk all around the plant. So if you're going to prune a spring bloomer, think about that. You don't want to be crushing your bulbs and stuff. You can do the elaborate thing of putting in planks and carefully place cinder blocks to hold them up, but it's better to time it this way. We marked, and I don't have a picture of this because I just didn't do this. We marked the one branch, this one right here. This is in March, before April, before it even leafed out. This branch has flower buds on it. See the enlarged parts at the end? Some of the branches out here don't have flower buds on them because they're too young. See, this is all straight new growth, this piece. Straight new growth isn't going to bloom. It's not going to bloom until it branches. So we marked and left one right out to as far and wide and as high as it was going as our marker plant, as our marker branch. And then we began cutting other branches. If it was just out beyond that area by a foot and it had bloomed, we cut it back by a foot inside that line that we wanted it to be, inside the size. So we cut a foot inside the size, inside the profile that we wanted, because this plant is growing about a foot a year on blooming wood. Blooming wood, the side branches are growing about a foot each year. So when we cut this one back, we cut it back. We said, okay, that's how tall you are. We want you to be down here. So every branch we cut back that had bloomed, we cut back a foot inside so it can grow for a whole year before it becomes too big. And we left that one so that we could all prune to that level. And we looked at the height. See, these didn't have flowers on them. They just shot up out of the middle where we thinned some crossing branches last time. Those we cut 2 feet inside the outline in order to let them grow for a couple of years before they reach the part where we're going to have to start cutting them again. So we took this monster like this, and we cut those guys, the bigger branches, 2 feet inside the outline and left side branches. And you can do the same thing with forsythia, with lilacs, with flowering almond, with quince, with red buds if you're keeping them. If they bloom in the spring, if you cut them right after they bloom and before the 4th of July, that's always been my bogey, then they will bloom well the next year because they have enough time to fill in with blooming aged wood. So that's what we have when we're done. And while we were doing it, it was brave pruners. There were 4 of us pruning, because I insist that if you come and work with us, that you're going to learn to do these things too and be brave enough to do them yourselves. So Judy was pruning over here, Carol was pruning over there. I can't remember if Donna was pruning over here. I was pruning in the back, and it comes out fine. And these spots that might look bare, stand back and look at them from a distance, and they're filling in. Are there any questions before we go? Steve and I.
Suzanne is asking, what do we think of the app Picture This? It seems pretty accurate. I haven't used it, so I don't have an opinion.
It is pretty accurate. A couple of friends have it and have used it while I've been watching. Was it Ohio? Either an Ohio or Illinois extension agent trialed it for 6 months and then wrote up a report on it and said it was she trialed several of the identification programs. And she gave it a very high rating. So Picture This, I think, is a pretty good thing to use. I don't use it. I don't need the app on my phone. I take a picture and look it up later. I find that I learn better that way. Even if I'm looking it up online and looking at the screen at home, when I'm sitting at my desk and writing my notes, I'm more likely to remember it. So I do it that way, but I have used it next to just while people are standing around. So we'll wrap
All
it up.
right.
Thank you for being with us for Free for All Friday. Talk to you guys next week, or give us send us an email. If we didn't answer your question yet, look for it this weekend. I'll catch up. Thank you.
Thank you all. Ta-ta for now. See you next Friday.
Yep.